Imagine your manager walks up to you and asks, "How many customers do we have?" Then, before you answer, another question comes: "What is our total revenue this month?" And before you are done thinking, they ask, "What is the average salary of the employees?" Now, here is the question: can you answer all these questions using the SQL concepts which we have learned so far? Technically, yes. Efficiently, not really. And that's exactly why you need aggregate functions. Today, we are going to understand what aggregate functions are, why they are so important, and what are we going to cover in next few videos. Let's understand the problem with the raw data. Let's say you have sales table with 10,000 records. Do you really want to manually count all those rows? Of course not. What if you want total sales amount? Would you manually add every value? Again, no. And what if you need the highest sales amount, or the lowest sales amount, or the average order value? Doing this manually would be slow, error prone, and completely impractical. This is where SQL becomes incredibly powerful. Now let's look into what are aggregate functions. Aggregate functions are special SQL functions that perform calculations on multiple rows and returns a single summarized result. Instead of looking at every record individually, they help us answer important business questions instantly. For example, how many customers do we have? What is the total revenue? What is the average salary? What is the highest product price? And what is the lowest product value? Notice something interesting? We are no longer interested in individual rows. Now we are interested in the summary of the data. And that's exactly what aggregate functions helps us achieve. Now let's find out, why do we need aggregate functions? There is something every aspiring data analyst should know. They are one of the foundations of data analysis. Almost every dashboard, every report, KPI, and business summary you see is powered by aggregate functions. Think about it. Whenever a company wants to know total sales, average revenue, number of customers, highest performing products, lowest performing region, aggregate functions are usually involved somewhere in the process. In other words, they help us transform the raw data into meaningful business insights, and that's exactly what data analysis is all about. Now that we understand why aggregate functions matter, let's talk about what we are going to learn. Over next few videos, we will cover the most important aggregate functions in SQL. We will learn count, sum, average, min, max. And once we are comfortable with these functions, we will combine them with one of the powerful concepts like group by and having. That's where SQL starts becoming much more analytical and much more exciting, because instead of simply retrieving the data, you will start analyzing it. Let's try to understand the real world perspective. Let's take a simple example. Imagine you are working as a data analyst and your manager asks, "How many orders were placed this month?" You don't need to view thousands of rows here. You just need one number. Now imagine he asks, "What was our total sales amount?" Again, you don't need every transaction, only a summary. This ability to summarize large volume of data quickly is one of the reasons why SQL is such an important skill for data analysts, and aggregate functions are the tools that make it possible. Now that you understand what aggregate functions are and why they are so important, it's time to learn the first and the most frequently used aggregate function in the SQL, which is count. Because before we can analyze data, we need to answer one specific and simple question: how much data do we have? That's all for this video. In the next video, we will start with the count function. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.